Privacy, the word which we love to have in our life. But do we really have it? Nowadays, having privacy from other companies and people is very hard. Hello and welcome to one more video of Box Info. Privacy is a state in which one is not observed or disturbed by other people. Data sharing with other companies is very easy nowadays. All thanks to the internet. Big giant companies are collecting data from you. But how much is too much? How will you know? And how can we control it? There are some rules and regulations against this data collection. Some countries have their own rules, and some countries are really trying hard to control that. We now have European regulations that are trying to limit the amount of data that can be collected secretly and used against. And we have also seen the basic structure of internet itself changing in response to this understanding. When you install an app, you give the permission to them to take control of your device. Anything you do on that device, the company can do. They can read your email. They can collect every document on your phone. They can look into your contact. They can turn on your location service. They can see anything that's on your phone. Or they can ask Google for a copy of our email box because Google saves a copy of that. Everything that you typed in that search bar, Google has a copy of that. Every private message you sent on the Facebook, every link that you clicked, everything you liked, they keep a permanent record. For example, Google Map keeps a record of your location. It keeps everything in its timeline. Where you went, what cab you took, which coffee shop you went on a daily basis. You went to the hospital. Afterwards, you spent a long time at the hospital. After you left the hospital, you made a phone call. You made a phone call to your mother. You talked to your mother until the middle of the night. The hospital was oncology clinic. Even if you can't see the content of this conversation, the activity record tells everything. What the company calls metadata, which they agree they don't need any warrant to collect, tells the whole story. And these activity records are being created and are being shared, collected and intercepted constantly by the companies. Ultimately, it means they are selling it. They trade as they make their businesses on the back of these records. What they are selling is not the information. What they are selling is us. They are selling our future. They are selling our past. They are selling our history, our identity. Ultimately, they are stealing our power and making our story work for them. The internet has completely changed the human race. But with all the good comes the bad also. It's pretty well known nowadays the corporates are taking advantages of us from the past 2 decades. Our web browsing habits have turned into a hunting ground for targeted advertising, data harvesting and the exploitation of users by free-to-use platform. But what if there was a way to stop this? Apple, in their latest software update, Apple gave the iPhone the ability to block the companies from buying and selling the user data. This update strikes right into the Facebook business model. And Zuckerberg isn't happy about this. And the battle between the two tech giants may have just begun. So what data Facebook was extracting? Their physical address, email address, name, phone number, user ID, device ID, purchase history, financial history, precise location, course location, contact, photos or videos, search history, browser data, advertising data, crash data, and performance data.
Privacy means people know what they're signing up for in plain English and repeatedly. That's what it means. I'm an optimist. I believe people are smart. And some people want to share more data than other people do. Ask them. Ask them every time. Make them tell you to stop asking them if they get tired of you asking them. Let them know precisely what you're going to do with their data.
And without iOS 14, user would have no idea. The company introduced a feature called App Tracking Transparency, and it would impact both the tech and advertising industry. App Tracking Transparency, or ATP, enables users to choose whether or not they want a specific app to access, track, and share data that is valuable to advertisers. Each time you open up an app for the first time, a pop-up message will appear that reads, "Allow this app to track your activity across company's app and website." Then it is followed by an appeal from the company themselves informing user why tracking is important for functionality of this app. If you are a user that enjoys ads specifically targeted towards you, you can allow that. But if you prefer to keep your information private, you have now an option to opt out advertising tracking entirely. I have no doubt the Facebook, who was negatively impacted by this update, will invent new ways to get around this and ensure the growth. But Apple does have a history of setting trends. If app tracking transparency is well received by the public, it could be a just matter of time before other companies create their own versions. Could Apple be doing all of this just to appear better? Yes, that's possible. But whatever the true motive is, I think Apple has done a very good thing here. And at the very least, it will be a good for their brand image. But whether this will change the course of the internet is yet to be seen. How can we avoid this? Try to keep your personal and business account different. Turn off your location when it's not in use. Log out from your account when you're not using it. Turn off your data when it's not in use. Try not to give your email ID or your phone number to the shopkeepers. Get rid of unwanted app installed in your phone. Try to use a secure website. Educate your young ones. As long as you control it, your privacy is in your hand. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Until then, Jai Hind.
Now 40 Indian journalists, 3 major opposition figures, 1 constitutional authority, 2 serving ministers in the Modi government, current and former heads and officials of security organizations and business persons have been named in a leaked database of telephone numbers that may have been hacked into using an Israeli spyware technology called Pegasus. 7 journalists from the list of 40 submitted their data for digital forensics, and a security lab has found evidence that these phones had been compromised. It is not possible to know conclusively whether phones were infected with Pegasus without the analysis of devices by forensic experts, and the Amnesty Security Lab has found traces of the spyware on the mobile phones of these 7 journalists who agreed to have their phones examined. The Modi government has said that there's been no authorized interception by government agencies. This after an international collaborative reporting project published an investigative report on how phones of journalists, ministers and activists may have been used to spy on them. The Israeli company, the NSO Group, which sells Pegasus, has said that it offers its spyware only to governments and vetted governments.
Sarah, Pegasus is back in the headlines again, but this time with a bigger number. In 2019, there were, for the first time, the Pegasus spyware came to the news, wherein WhatsApp themselves had reported to both the Indian agencies, and also they had filed a case in US court against NSO, an Israeli company which is spyware called Pegasus.
I rise to make a statement on reported use of spyware Pegasus.
Ed, could you just give us your initial reaction to the findings of the Pegasus project?
This is everywhere. This is an industry that should not exist. We're seeing what the NSO Group, which is sort of the most famous of these guys, is up to. But the NSO Group is only one company of many. And if one company smells this bad, what's happening with all the others? I mean, when I look at this, what the Pegasus Project has revealed is a sector where their only product are infection vectors, right? They don't, they're not security products. They're not providing any kind of protection, any kind of prophylactic. They don't make vaccines. The only thing they sell is the virus. And I think saying that they only sell this to government doesn't make that better when you look at who the targets are that have just been revealed.
Our only witness today is Mr. Sundar Pichai. Mr. Pichai is the Chief Executive Officer of Google.
I have an iPhone, and if I move from here and go over there and sit with my Democrat friends, which will make them real nervous, does Google track my movement? It's either yes or no.
Not by default. There may be a Google service which you've opted in to use, and if...
So Google knows that I am moving over there. It's not a trick question. You know, you make $100 million a year, you ought to be able to answer that question. Does Google know through this phone that I am moving over there and sit next to Mr. Johnson, which would make him real nervous? It's his question. It's yes or no.
I wouldn't be able to answer without looking at...
You can't say yes or no.
Without knowing more details, sir.
Mr. Zuckerberg, would you be comfortable sharing with us the name of the hotel you stayed in last night? Question basically of what information Facebook's collecting, who they're sending it to, and whether they ever asked me in advance my permission to do that. Is that a fair thing for a user of Facebook to expect?
Yes, Senator. I think everyone should have control over how their information is used.